The Rhode Island Foundation, partnering with passionate Rhode Islanders to lead, transform, and inspire our state. Learn more at rhodeislandfoundation.org.
Welcome to another segment of In Another Opinion, a public information program where our discussions are focused on the communities of color in the state of Rhode Island. I'm your host, Peter Wells. My guest today is Nina Panda, Executive Director of Skills for Rhode Island's Future. Nina, welcome.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's our pleasure. We always like to get more information out to the community about what's going on and what's important. Skills for Rhode Island's Future, as I understand it, the mission is to meet the needs of local employers and matching those needs with the underemployed of Rhode Island and who have the skills or the potential to meet those needs. Am I on target?
You are 100% right. That's right. See, now I can take you out to do our pitches all the time. So, yes, we are a new nonprofit organization. We opened our doors officially in October of 2016, so just about 20 months ago. And our mission is exactly what you said. It's to connect local talent who's unemployed or underemployed, so right. Even the underemployed, with employers who are looking for talent. And we do that a few different ways. We are a demand-driven program, which means we start with the employers, really try to understand their hiring needs and what the ideal candidate profile is. And then we source that talent through different sources. So we do some job postings like you would typically see, but then we also really get out into the community and let people know what employers are looking for and making sure that we can make that match for them. If a direct talent pipeline doesn't exist, we also work with employers on developing customized train-to-hire programs so that we can train our communities to be prepared for the jobs that exist today and tomorrow.
Very good. Well, how did this concept come about?
Certainly. So it's actually replicated off a model in Chicago called Skills for Chicagoland's Future. Okay. And it was through a series of connections that our local Department of Labor and Training Director, Scott Jensen, learned of the program in Chicago and felt like there were underpinnings of the program that could be easily replicated here in Rhode Island, and then really tailor it to the Rhode Island employer market. And we know that Rhode Island was hit hard after the recession. Yes. And unemployment, we had the highest unemployment rates for a long time in the country. And while we've seen those numbers dip and we've definitely become on par with the national average, we're actually seeing something a little different happen with our employers now. And they're actually struggling to find talent and talent that's ready to work. As the unemployment numbers dip, it's going to continue to be harder and harder, which makes our role equally important and maybe on some occasions even more important as we develop talent pipeline.
Well, that's interesting, and I guess the next question or the follow-up is how do the Skills for Rhode Island's Future address the problem directly?
Certainly. So what we do, again, because we're starting with employers, we get to know exactly, we get behind the scenes of these companies. We work with their HR departments, understand their hiring culture, understand the exact skills that they're looking for. So when job seekers come into us, we're actually able to prepare them to what the employer wants to see. A lot of times it's kind of this crystal ball that you're trying to read all the time, and it's usually very opaque. Hiring has become very driven by technology, so people apply to jobs and they fill an online application and then they don't know what happens. We essentially act as the middleman, so we can actually talk with the job seekers and say, great, are you interested in working for company Y? What do you think you can bring to the table? What does the application process look like? And then we provide them with some career enhancement services and prep them for those job interviews.
Well, tell me, Nina, is there a specific skill types that, or companies that you're working with? Is it certain types of specific skill sets?
We work across all industries, actually. We have right now 74 employer partners. Wow. So from the largest corporations in Rhode Island, like CVS, down to small businesses that are only 20 employees large. And so it really boils down to what the hiring needs are. And then what we do, Peter, when we go out to meet with employers, we have a good understanding because we know who the job seekers are. We have about 18,000 job seekers in our database. And so
18,000?
18,000 job seekers in our database. So we already are building a profile of who these job seekers are. We know the skills that they come with. We know their educational levels. We know their previous employment history. So when we go in to talk with an employer about job openings, we already have a good indication as to whether or not the job seekers exist in Rhode Island. And then based on that, we'll decide to work with an employer, and then within an employer, look at their specific jobs, and we'll maybe narrow down to 3 or 4 job titles that we think we can be successful in finding talent for them.
Well, how did you build this 18,000 database? I mean, did you specifically have people apply to you and give you their skill sets, or were you able to tap into Department of Labor skill sets or something?
Certainly, it's a combination of both. So we
Okay.
run our own job boards where folks apply to jobs through us for an end employer. And so in that application process, we're collecting data on those job seekers. We also work directly with Department of Labor and Training, and we look at candidates that are job seekers through their unemployment database, so we're able to transfer information there as well. And how we reached that 18,000 number really was through a lot of social media and targeted marketing to let people know about our services. And quite frankly, it's the employers that attract the job seekers. So when they see big names like CVS and Bank of America and AAA, they then come to our doors to know that we can help become that broker for their job.
Now, you mentioned that there's this connection to Department of Labor. So the various offices of unemployment offices, basically, that have the computers set up and so forth, is your operation attached to that?
It is not directly attached to that. We actually have our own independent office space, but we do work closely with the networks and the one-stops to try to let them know about opportunities that exist. They definitely refer folks over to us who are, again, looking for those jobs. And then we'll go out there and do hiring events, whether it's at a local one-stop or different community-based organizations, different municipalities who are interested in trying to make services available. So we actually get out into the community to let folks know.
Well, before I forget to ask you, where are the offices located?
Certainly. So our physical office is in downtown Providence. We're right in Kennedy Plaza in the Greater Providence Chamber Building.
Okay.
But even though that's our physical location, I know a lot of people may not know the area or don't want to come into Providence. We are a statewide agency, so we are really mobile. We are on the ground, and we utilize our public libraries quite a bit to get out to do community events. So we try to meet job seekers out where they are. So every month we hold different community events so that we can target, again, different communities around the state who are looking.
Well, obviously one of the questions that a lot of people will ask: how are you funded? You said nonprofit, so where's your support come from, Nina?
So Department of Labor and Training is our #1 funding source right now. They received some federal grants, which were the seed money to incubate our organization, and they continue to work and be our primary funding source. This year, the board and myself at Skills for Rhode Island's Future have made it a priority to diversify our funding sources, and we are starting to look at private foundations. We are starting to look at other corporate sponsorships. As we're able to prove the value of our work, we're hoping that that'll be easier. But being a startup, it's a challenge, and so we are still very dependent on the state funding at this point.
Now, do applicants have to pay a fee for services?
They do not. Actually, all of the services are free and available. The only qualifying information for a job seeker is that they have to demonstrate that they are unemployed or underemployed. And that's a really great distinguishing factor, because unemployed is a very easy thing to quantify.
Right.
But folks who are underemployed, and I think we don't talk about that enough here in the state of Rhode Island, is we have many people with great talents who are just staying at a steady job because it's a certain paycheck. And so I liken it to during the recession, there were folks graduating with their undergrad degrees but couldn't find their first job, so settled working as a customer service rep at a store. And they never really made it to the level where they should go. And there's a big percentage of Rhode Islanders who fall into that bucket. So part of our goal is to get them to the salaries that they deserve.
So is there an income minimum and maximum kind of a thing that
Not
suggests?
for eligibility, no. So unemployment, yes.
Okay.
Unemployment and underemployment impacts everybody. You know, we've had, and some of my hardest days there have actually been with folks coming in who've made a six-figure salary, who've lost their job through the downturn in the economy, and then folks where layoffs have happened, and they've come in and they're used to a standard of living, and those jobs aren't readily available in our state. And so we have to work with them on kind of rebranding who they are, really taking a look at how their talents translate into other industries, and then be able to talk with the employers and be able to say, why is this candidate, you know, worthy of an interview?
So let me ask you a question. If you could give me a few examples of the type of skill sets that you've matched with employers. Of course, you don't have to use their names, but...
Certainly. So a large portion of our employers are looking for folks who are kind of customer savvy, right? So really strong customer service communication skills.
Okay.
They're also looking for folks who are highly analytical, so who can look at a problem and really bring that 360 view of that problem and be able to problem solve it. They're also looking for folks who want to learn, who are curious to learn, and who are willing to go through trainings within our employers. We are fortunate in Rhode Island that many of our employers still offer a lot of training once they're hired. And so many of our companies have really robust onboarding programs. It's just that they need to make sure that folks are ready to work. Believe it or not, our employers' number one concern are soft skills. Are they going to show up to work on time? Are they going to persist through problems when they're working? Are they going to be consistent in their work environment? And so we spend a lot of time on that. And we see that more so as people are trying to enter the workforce. But then on the other side of that equation, they're looking for folks with a lot of leadership skills. And that's something there seems to be a little bit of a vacuum here in the state.
Well, that's, you know, this is really interesting. Now, I've known you for a number of years, Nina. I mean,
Certainly.
I think we met about 15 years ago.
Sounds right.
At Nickerson House, I think, is when I first met you.
That's right.
And I've watched your career growth, and I've watched the outcomes that you've brought and had in different organizations. You've done a great job.
Thank you.
And I know you'll do a good one with this one. But one of the things I think that's real important is, again, to find out about the program. If I didn't know you, I might not know about Skills for Rhode Island's Future.
Certainly.
So what are you doing in that area of actually trying to market the program, so to speak?
Certainly. So we work with about 48 community partners to try to get the word out there. When you're new, it's hard to get people to understand what you do. And our concept of workforce development is not, it's a little different than what folks are used to, right? We've historically been a supply-driven model for workforce development where you start with a candidate and you train them in the hopes that they get a job. And I think the minute people hear demand-driven, they think that we are working for exclusively the employer, and that's not the case.
Okay.
The employer is kind of the starting point to understand the job and to understand the needs, and then we kind of build back and say, now that we know this, let's build a plan on how we're going to get them the talent. So I feel like we're getting the word out there. I do think that it's going to take time. We're trying to leverage our resources with our community partners. We're trying to leverage our resources with our employer partners. And as our employer partners become more comfortable and confident in the work that we do, we believe that's also going to help get the word out there.
Well, that's true. Now, you mentioned that there were some 75, but did I hear you correctly?
74 employer partners.
74 employer partners. And that ranges from, as you said, large companies to small companies.
That's right.
How do you identify the companies? Do they come to you, or do you find them?
Yes. So in our beginning days, it was me knocking on the doors and saying,
Okay.
will you give us a try and work with us? We're very fortunate to have a board that's very engaged, that represents the business community. So our board has been a big influencer on the companies that we have at the table right now as well. And then we work closely with the chambers of commerce throughout the state. I mentioned that we are housed in the Greater Providence Chamber building. They actually incubated our organization and gave us space. And so they have been a great connector with employers and trying to get the word out there. And Peter, truth be told, we're at the point now where employers are calling us, and I need to build capacity in order to meet needs. So we're actually letting employers know that we want to work with them but don't have the capacity right now, and hope over the next year we'll be able to build our capacity to bring them on.
Well, how large is your staff, Nina?
We're at 19 right now.
Wow.
Yes, so in less than 2 years we've grown significantly. Our fiscal year just began last week. July 1 is the start of our fiscal year. And if all goes well, my plan is to add 10 additional staff this year.
Unbelievable.
Yes.
Well, that's a lot of activity going on that just isn't as visible maybe as some other organizations are. Not that it's not doing the work, because obviously if you have a list of 18,000 people in your database in 74 companies, ranging from large to small, you've got a lot going on.
We definitely do. We definitely do.
So if I was a business owner that had of 10 employees, and I wanted to fill some spots that I haven't been able to find, how do I get to you? I just walk in and say,
certainly,
here I am?
Pick up the phone and call us up. That's what we like to do. We like to be able to have conversations with people to truly understand what it is that they're looking for. We're also big on understanding a company's culture, because small companies are going to operate very differently. Their capacity to hire is going to be very different than the larger companies. And so what we do is we encourage people to give us a call. Our phone number is 401-680-5960, and ask to speak with me. I generally go on all the initial employer calls to let them know what we do and how to get involved.
Very good. I mean, this is it's unbelievable. The current administration and every state in the country right now is looking to increase jobs.
Of course.
I mean, that's the byline. That's the political byline, and that's the reality. And to have an organization like yours working to fill jobs that most people say don't exist.
Right, the jobs exist, and you know, I think that's what's really unique about our organization, and it's something that I've enjoyed, because you've known me for quite some time, where I've typically worked in community-based organizations, where the job seekers would typically be my clients, and I love that work. What's unique about this role is we get to be talking about the local economy and how jobs play such an important role in being able to do that. So when, you know, we're working again closely with Department of Labor and Training, we work closely with the Commerce Corporation, so when they're looking to bring companies in here, we're able to give a picture of what does the supply look like, and why should we be able to quickly, at the you know, kind of turn of a page, be able to provide a pipeline of talent.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Nina, I always ask this question of anybody who comes in, especially an organization that's doing something in the community.
Certainly.
How do you measure, if you do, your success rate in placing people?
So our organization is very metric driven, and I think that's the beauty of being able to do a startup, is we were able to bake in our metrics right from day one. So from everything like monthly goals that we set for placements, all the way on up to what is our economic impact by the wages that are being earned. And so in the 19 months that we have been fully operational, we've already placed over 625 people in jobs.
Wow.
And our local impact to the economy has been $13.6 million in wages earned from those 600 plus people that we've placed.
Wow, does Gina know?
She does, yes, absolutely, absolutely.
Because those are unbelievable numbers.
They are. We're really proud of what we've been able to accomplish, and I think, you know, timing was right. I think we hit the market at the right place, where, again, that we've seen some growth in the local economy. Employers are starting to expand. We also know that there's talent that exists out there, and how do we get them trained for those right jobs? I think everything came together at a perfect time. You asked about how we develop metrics.
Right.
I mentioned my board is a very business-driven board. They set pretty high goals for us, and so this year alone, in the calendar year of 2018, they set a goal of us placing 450 people. I'm very confident that we're going to break that goal. And in addition to that, we're also placing 150 high school students in paid internships this summer. Also working very closely with the Governor's Office, Rhode Island Department of Education, and the Governor's Workforce Board under the Prepare RI initiative. So in addition to the 450 kind of adult direct placements, we're also placing 150 youth into paid internships.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yes.
I mean, all the studies suggest that internships are the way of the future.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And Peter, if I had it my way, I would even love to create adult internships. I think a lot of times there are some held beliefs about people who are unemployed and underemployed or limited English speaking or formerly incarcerated. In order for us to break through those barriers, I'd love to be able to pilot something where there's adult internships as well. Not quite to the level of like a, you know, an intense training program, but really bringing people who are job ready, who need that chance to be able to get their first job.
Well, let me ask you a question. The jobs that you do place, there's some requirement that you place on the employer, such as providing benefits, insurance, and that sort of stuff, or it's just whatever the employer has?
It's whatever the employer has. And so one of our goals, so we are not a staffing agency, so we don't provide temporary staffing. We don't support payroll for the employees that we're placing. That is all on the companies.
Okay.
But one of the things that we're challenging employers to do is taking a look at their wages. We've actually worked successfully with 3 companies where their entry-level wages, I'm proud to say, are going to be going up to $15 an hour.
Excellent.
As a result of some of our work, and they were struggling to find talent. And so we were able to do some salary analysis for those companies with other like companies that we're placing folks at. And it's really sparked different conversations. And our goal is to try to make sure that everybody goes into a livable wage job. So as we're talking to employers, we're also trying to target those jobs that is going to afford people to live comfortably.
Are all the businesses Rhode Island based, or could they be outside of the state as well?
So they have to have a Rhode Island presence. So we only work with companies that have a local presence. So
Okay.
I'll give you an example. Like Bank of America is one of our large employer partners. They're not headquartered here, but they
No.
have a strong presence here. And so we will work with them. But we only work with their local market. So we would not supply talent outside of the local market.
What about into our neighboring communities, into Massachusetts? Is that part of this?
Certainly. You know, we know that there are a lot of folks who live in Rhode Island and kind of work right over the border. And again, so if it is an employer partner, and we do have some cooperative agreements, another one of our big employer partners is General Dynamics Electric Boat.
Okay.
And there's a cooperative agreement, not only just with our organization, but
Sure.
within the state to be able to supply talent if they have to go over to Connecticut.
Very good.
Yes.
I mean, it's a 360 kind of a thing.
It is. Absolutely.
Fantastic.
Yes.
So how does one how does one determine if I'm underemployed, besides the fact that I have a budget at home and I'm not meeting it?
Yes. Quite frankly, it's as simple as that. I will say Department of Labor and Training has really pushed the envelope on what it means to be underemployed. Typically, you know, the largely held belief about underemployed is somebody who might be working 2 or 3 jobs just to make ends meet.
Okay.
Or who might not be meeting their potential in terms of educational standard or talent standards. People who are working and living in poverty. Anybody who's living at the poverty level automatically qualifies for our services. And so it really depends on the individual. And I think one of the things that we forget is during the recession, a lot of people lost their wages, right? And so how do we get them back up to their earning potential of where they once were? And so that also could be another thing. So
Sure.
people look at me and say, you're willing to work with people who make a 6-figure salary? And I said, yes. Well, if 5 years ago they had to take a massive haircut and go down to $75,000, but their standard earning capacity over the last 10 years had been a 6-figure salary, we'd certainly work with that person as well.
What about the educational piece? Are you locked into any of the schools like URI, RIC, or CCRI?
Certainly. We try to work with all of our state institutions, particularly around job training programs. So I mentioned that we work with employers to come up with job training opportunities. And we, right now, we're actually working with CVS, who had a need for pharmacy technicians. And what we learned through our conversation with CVS is that pharmacy technicians, while they're an entry point into the company, there's actually significant career growth where you start as a farm tech, whether it's going into store management or going into corporate. So we helped map out what those career pathways were. And then we put together, we've been working with the Community College of Rhode Island. CVS has been at the table in trying to develop a curriculum that really speaks to the needs of what an employee would have when they go into CVS. So in this particular case, it's a pharmacy technician training at its core, but then we're also wrapping around management and customer service and skills that you would normally see in a store manager, so that when a person completes that program, they can get their experience and then continue moving up. And that's one of the things that we're also pushing quite a bit is, yes, you might enter here, but where are your careers going to take you long term? And how do we prepare them for that career growth?
Now, this might be another outside of the box where you are, but what about, let's say, someone who wants to open a Dunkin' Donuts franchise? Would you work with Dunkin' Donuts and again, an underemployed or unemployed person to create that opportunity? Certainly.
We had a very similar situation with a Greek restaurant that opened up here. First of its kind in the U.S. They were a franchisee out of Greece, actually, and they just opened up in downtown Providence. And when we walked in, they needed an entire staff. So not only did we help them with staffing, we also helped coordinate food safety training. We also helped coordinate other workplace safety options and try to really help build their talent pipeline. Those are the exciting opportunities because you get to build with a company from the ground up. Absolutely.
Is that particular operation ongoing now?
It is, absolutely. Yes.
Is it fair to ask?
Oh yeah, who it is? Yeah.
Yes.
The name of the place is called Yolenni's.
Yolenni's.
Yes, it's kind of a quasi fast food, but then they also have dinner at nighttime, and so they really had a broad range of what they needed for staff, and so we were able to work with them and identify that.
Where downtown are they located?
They're in the old Tilden Thurber building, so
Which
right
is?
Downtown. I believe it's on Westminster Street.
Okay,
right?
very good. Okay.
Yes.
Well, I'll have to check it out because
Please
I'm
do.
always looking for
Well, let
good
me know and I'll
places to
join
eat.
you when you go.
You know, up to now, I think for Greek food, I've only been going over to Andrea's.
Yes.
On
yes,
Thayer
on
Street.
Thayer Street.
Exactly.
Yes.
Well, this is fantastic information, and the community really needs to know more about this. So I invite you to provide me with additional information that I can put in print media to let people know.
I would love to do that.
Very good, Nina. So, what's the future of skills of Rhode Island skills for Rhode Island's future?
Yeah, what is our future?
Yes.
Like I said, you know, we have some growth plans for this fiscal year. We want to add 10 additional staff. And I should say, you know, Peter, when we hire our staff, we also try to hire folks who are unemployed so they know what job seekers who come through our doors, what they're going through.
So we're looking at a win-win-win.
That's right. So I'm very proud to say 80% of our staff right now were previously unemployed or underemployed.
Wow.
And we are also culturally reflective of the community, so we make sure that our staff have the language abilities to cut across multiple cultures within our state. But again, our plan is to add 10 additional people and expand our footprint. And we'll hopefully know if all of our funding comes through, so we'll be able to do that this summer.
Well, this is great. Before we run out of time, let me ask you really one question. Do the employers receive any credits, tax credits for this?
So not through us, but if they do have tax credits in place through Commerce Corporation or any other municipality, and if they need to hit certain benchmarks, certainly we could come in and help meet those hiring needs. So we don't provide those tax credit incentives, but we can certainly help a company fulfill their obligations under those credits.
This is unbelievable. I'm excited. I want to learn more. I'm going to get out to your operation.
Great. Would love
just
to
so
have
I can
you.
see it. I want to see some of the success results that you have. And as I said, I'm inviting you, and I know the audience, the viewers, want to know more about what's happening with Skills for Rhode Island's future. Sounds great.
Thank you. Thank you.
We have run out of time, but I want to thank today's guest, Nina Panda, and you, the viewers, for tuning in to another segment of In Another Opinion. A special thanks to Rhode Island PBS for making this program possible. I'm your host, Peter Wells. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter at IA Opinion, and have a great day.
The Rhode Island Foundation, partnering with passionate Rhode Islanders to lead, transform, and inspire our state. Learn more at rhodeislandfoundation.org.